On a certain vibrant afternoon, the playground was alive with kids laughing and playing. Among them were two girls, Rukewe and Jumoke, standing near a dusty makeshift running track. Rukewe, with her natural athletic build, moved gracefully, her movements smooth and relaxed as she stretched. She was quiet, but her eyes shone with a quiet confidence. Her close friend Jumoke bent over to help her, fiercely tying her shoelaces, her face set with determination. She was full of energy, competitive to her core, and eager to prove herself. Rukewa smiled as she watched Jumoke gear up and teasingly said, "So are you ready to lose again today, Jumoke?" Jumoke playfully glared at her and replied, "Lose? You just got lucky last time. This time, I'm going to leave you in the dust. Remember, last month I had a higher win count, and I'm not yet ready to hand over the baton." They both laughed, a sound filled with the innocence of childhood dreams. Then they took their positions on the starting line, crouched and ready. The excitement between them was palpable. They weren't just racing, they were dreaming. From the moment they had met, Rukewe and Jumoke found themselves bound by a dream. It was a dream of standing on the world stage, of representing their country, Nigeria, of making history together. It wouldn't matter which of them would take the gold or the silver, but it had to be two of them. Back at the present, the girls took off, sprinting down the track. Rukewe's stride was steady and effortless, while Jumoke was filled with raw energy and grit. They urged each other to go faster, each one finding joy in the challenge of keeping up with the other. Dust kicked up behind them as they flew forward. They reached the finish line. They were nearly neck and neck. They burst into laughter, out of breath but exhilarated. Panting heavily, Jumoke said, "One day we're going to run like this at the Olympics. We'll be on TV and everyone will know our names." Smiling shyly, Rukewe asked, "You really think so?" Jumoke confidently replied, "Of course. I mean, why else would we practice every day? We are going to be champions, Olympic medalists." Rukewe's eyes lit up as she imagined the future. Her quiet smile grew, and she nodded, feeling the weight of Jumoke's words. There was a shared understanding between them, a promise. She said, "Then let's make a pact. We'll train together every day. No giving up, no matter what. We're going to make it to the Olympics together." Jumoke extended her pinky finger, and Rukewe linked hers with it, sealing their childhood promise. The two girls walked off the track, already discussing their next practice and dreaming of what lay ahead. The playground noise faded into the background, and the receding sunlight lingered on their intertwined pinkies, a symbol of their pact. The day closed on a high note, capturing the innocence of their shared dream and the strength of their friendship. The future looked bright, and they were filled with hope, unaware of the challenges ahead. For now, all they knew was that they were unstoppable, bound by sheer determination. Chapter 2. Years had passed since those carefree playground races. Rukewe and Jumoke had grown into powerful athletes, now training at the national level. The years have seen them go from one intense training camp to another, bustling track competitions, and the applause of award ceremonies, all signs of their rising success in the athletics world. At each competition, the girls stood out. Rukewe, known for her natural grace and focus, approached each race with a calm, calculated confidence. Jumoke, meanwhile, remained as competitive as ever, always pushing herself to the limit and drawing attention with her sheer intensity. In one national competition, Rukewe and Jumoke warmed up, Stretching and preparing for their event, standing side by side, they watched other runners on the track, soaking in the atmosphere. With a grin, Jimoke looked at Rukewe and said, "You better not take it easy on me out there. I want to see if you've got any new tricks." Rukewe smiled back. "Trust me, Jimoke, you'll have to be faster than ever. I've been working on my sprints." They shared a laugh, their camaraderie evident, though with a slight edge of rivalry, a natural result of years of competing side by side. Despite this rivalry, they were both thrilled, knowing they had reached a level they'd only dreamed of as kids. As the race began, the energy of the crowd was electric. Rukewe and Jumoke pushed themselves hard, neck and neck, as they raced down the track. Nearing the finish line, the crowd cheered wildly, and they each made one final explosive effort. Rukewe finished a fraction of a second behind her friend Jumoke, and they collapsed into laughter, embracing as they crossed the line, exhausted but exhilarated. Later, during an intense training camp, the coach gathered the team. Rukewe and Jumoke, along with the other elite athletes, waited in nervous anticipation as he held a list of names ready to announce those who had qualified to represent the country at the upcoming Olympics. The coach began reading the list. Among the names he read out were Jumoke Bakare and Rukewe Ojeniko. The two girls' faces lit up, eyes wild with shock and excitement. They turned to each other, letting the reality of their achievements sink in. Beaming, Jumoke said, "We did it, Rukewe. We are actually going to the Olympics." Rukewe, emotional, replied, "We kept our promise. We're really doing it together." They hugged tightly, their bond stronger than ever. In that moment, all the early mornings, grueling trainings, and countless competitions felt worth it. A few days later, a celebration banquet was held for the newly qualified Olympic athletes. Rukewe and Jumoke were in high spirits, surrounded by supporters, friends, and family. They were recognized as two of the brightest rising stars in the national athletic community. Raising a glass, Rukewe declared, "To all those early mornings, long runs, and the pact we made as kids. Here's to the Olympics and making it count." Jumoke, grinning, clinked her glass with Rukewe's. "To our dreams and to showing the world what we are made of." As the night wore on, the two stood arm in arm, filled with pride. Their friendship remained solid, even with the challenges they had faced on their journey. They were ready to take on the world side by side, just as they had always dreamed. The scene ended with the two of them laughing together, fueled by their determination and excitement for what lay ahead. Chapter 3. On a dark, rainy night, Rukewe was driving back from an evening training session, exhausted yet filled with excitement about her Olympic dreams. She had waited for a while, hoping the rain would stop, but the downpour had persisted. Everyone had to brave the odds and get home. The sky was pitch black, and the rain pounded relentlessly against her windshield, making it difficult to see. Her headlights barely cut through the downpour as the rain gleamed dangerously in the wet darkness. Suddenly, headlights appeared directly in front of her as a car veered into her lane. Rukewe reacted instantly, gripping the wheel tightly and swerving to avoid a collision. The tires skidded in the slick asphalt, and in a moment of terror, she lost control. Her car spun wildly. The world around her turned into a chaotic blur. She heard the screeching of metal, the shattering of glass, and she felt the violent jolt of impact. Everything went black, and only the faint sound of approaching sirens broke the silence. When she next opened her eyes, the dim light of a hospital room surrounded her. Monitors beeped softly, and an antiseptic smell filled the air. Disoriented and in pain, Rukewe tried to move but quickly realized her body felt foreign and heavy. Bandages covered her arms, and a cast wrapped tightly around her leg. She tried to sit up, but a sharp pain forced her back on the bed. A doctor entered the room with a somber look, his face carrying the weight of difficult news. "Hi, I believe your name is Rukewe. It's good to see you awake. You've been through quite an ordeal." She listened in silence as he explained her injuries: a fractured leg, broken ribs, and a bruised spine. The words weighed on her as though each one was pulling her dreams further from her. The doctor hesitated before adding, "With the right care and therapy, we'll do our best to get you back on your feet. But there's no guarantee. Right now, it's too soon to say." Rukewe's voice trembled as she asked, "The Olympics, will I still be able to run?" The doctor's hesitation was almost answer enough. His words lingered heavily in the room, filling it with an unspoken uncertainty. She lay in silence, struggling to process the harsh reality of her injuries. Her years of training, her dreams of representing her beloved country, Nigeria, all of it suddenly felt like a fading mirage. Days passed, each one blending into the next as she lay in that hospital bed. Her family visited, bringing flowers and encouragement. But what she longed for most was to see her friend, Jumoke. She imagined Jumoke bursting in with her usual optimism, telling her they would get through this together. Finally, one day, Jumoke arrived. But there was an unease in her expression, a forced cheerfulness that Rukewe didn't recognize. Rukewe managed a faint smile. "Jumoke, I was beginning to think you'd forgotten me." Jumoke attempted a cheerful tone. "How could I forget you? You look..." Her compliment got stuck, as evidently there was nothing to compliment about her look. Nevertheless, she managed to complete her sentence. "Well, you look like you're hanging in there." A moment of silence passed between them, thick with unspoken fears. Rukewe broke the quiet. "The doctors say they're not sure if I'll be able to compete, but I'm going to try my hardest. In physical therapy, I'll come back. We'll still make it to the Olympics together, just like we promised." Jumoke's expression faltered, and she looked down at her hands. When she finally looked up, there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Rukewe, maybe it's time to think about other possibilities. I mean, the Olympics. It's not everything, right?" Rukewe's heart sank, taken aback. "What do you mean? We made a promise. We've worked for this all our lives." Jumoke sighed. I know. It's just, there's a lot of pressure on the team right now. And if you're not able to, if you can't..." She trailed off, struggling to find the right words, but Rukewe understood the meaning all too clearly. Her heart ached with the sting of betrayal, feeling the support she'd counted on slipping away. "Are you saying you're giving up on me already? On us?" Rukewe's voice trembled with hurt. Jumoke looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not giving up, Rukewe. We need to be realistic. The Olympics are so close, and this is our chance. My chance." Those words pierced Rukewe deeply. She turned her face away, hiding the tears that filled her eyes. In a broken whisper, she said, I thought we were in this together, that nothing would come between us. I'm sorry, Rukewe. I just don't know how to help you right now. I need to stay focused. With those words, Jumoke turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Rukewe lay there, shattered, feeling the hollow space left by the friend she had once trusted completely. As the evening settled in, Rukewe stared at the ceiling, replaying Jumoke's words over and over. Doubt crept in, threatening to consume her. Yet a small voice inside urged her to hold on. She remembered their childhood races, the promises they had made, the dream they had shared. Through the pain and heartbreak, Rukewe found a flicker of resolve, and she vowed to fight, even if she had to do it alone. A quiet, determined voice echoed in her mind. Jumoke may have left, but I'm not giving up on myself. If I can't make it to the Olympics, I'll still fight to recover. I'll walk, I'll run, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find my way back to the track. This may be the hardest race I'll ever face, but I'll cross the finish line no matter what. A nurse entered the room to adjust her IV and noticed the fierce look in Rukewe's eyes, a spark of determination that hadn't been there before. You're looking stronger today, Rukewe. Just take it one step at a time. Sometimes, the biggest battles make us stronger. Rukewe nodded, her resolve solidifying. She knew the road to recovery would be long and painful, but she was ready to face it, even if it meant walking alone. The accident had changed everything, and her closest friendship had fractured, yet her spirit remained unbroken. As the rain continued to tap softly against the hospital window, she stared out into the night, her mind filled with thoughts of her uncertain future. This journey would be her hardest yet, but she felt a quiet strength growing within. The dreams that once seemed to slip from her grasp now felt like a new beginning, one she would pursue with unwavering determination. Chapter 4. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of the rehabilitation center, casting a gentle glow over the exercise equipment and therapy stations. Rukewe sat in her wheelchair, her gaze sweeping across the unfamiliar surroundings. The bright light felt warm, but the place itself was foreign, making her feel out of place. Every task here, every single movement, demanded an intensity that drained her, making the journey ahead feel both exhausting and intimidating. A cheerful voice cut through her thoughts as a man approached her with a warm smile. This was Obong, her physiotherapist, who carried a strong yet approachable presence. He extended a hand, his kindness evident. Hi, Rukewe. I'm Obong, your new teammate on this journey. Ready to put in some work? He asked, his voice light but full of sincerity. She nodded, managing a faint smile despite the worry that lingered. Her injured leg lay immobilized, a constant reminder of the pain she had endured. Ubong studied her face, his gaze taking in the apprehension, but also noticing the flicker of resilience that still lingered within her. I know this isn't where you imagined you'd be a few months before the Olympics, he continued gently, but this is where the real training begins. You're stronger than you think, Rukewe. Trust me on that. The first session began with simple mobility exercises, each one painfully testing her limits. Movements that had once been easy felt nearly impossible, and even lifting her leg brought a wave of burning pain. Ubon watched her closely, guiding her through each exercise with a steady, encouraging presence. This is harder than anything I've done before. I don't even know if I can get through this, she murmured, wincing at the discomfort, pain, and frustration. "We'll take it slow," Ubong replied with a reassuring smile. "Remember, this isn't about speed. Every step you take is a step forward, getting stronger. Think of it like training for a marathon. You can't run this whole distance in a day." Though she doubted herself, Rukewe pushed forward, each movement a testament to her determination to return to the track. Her focus sharpened and her grit deepened, though each exercise took everything she had. Over the next several weeks, time seemed to blur as Rukewe wrestled with the ups and downs of recovery. A series of moments played out in a relentless montage. Some days brought progress, while others reminded her of her limitations. The pain was often unbearable, and she fought back tears of frustration when even the smallest movements felt overwhelming. But there were also victories, however small. A little more mobility, a slight improvement in strength. Ubon was there through it all, encouraging her every step of the way. As they walked together, his confidence in her abilities gradually strengthened her own, creating a bond built on shared struggle and determination. But one day, after a grueling session, Rukewe found herself at a breaking point. She sat on the therapy bench, her head in her hands, feeling the weight of despair pressing down on her. Sensing her need for support, Ubong sat beside her quietly, giving her space. "I thought I was stronger than this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I'm just broken. How am I supposed to run again if I can barely stand?" Ubong looked at her, his gaze filled with empathy and understanding. He waited a moment before speaking, his voice calm and reassuring. "Rukewe, I know it feels impossible right now, but I've worked with athletes who've faced setbacks just as big. I once helped a marathon runner who was told he'd never walk again. After a year, he ran his next race. I've seen people climb mountains after facing injuries that seemed insurmountable." His words stirred something within her, a flicker of hope that had nearly gone out. She looked up, feeling the sincerity in his voice, seeing the belief he had in her. "This is a different kind of race. It's longer and harder than any you've run before. But you have what it takes, Rukewe. I believe in you," he said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Rukewe felt a shift within herself. Ubong's words rekindled her spirit, igniting a renewed determination to push through her pain and keep going. She found a strength she thought was lost. In the weeks that followed, Rukewe's strength began to return little by little. She graduated from a wheelchair to crutches, and eventually she took her first few steps unassisted. Each day presented a new challenge, and though the journey was long and grueling, her resolve grew stronger with each accomplishment. Ubong was always there, his steady encouragement bolstering her spirit. One afternoon, as Rukewe completed an exercise she had been unable to do just a few weeks before, Ubong grinned with pride. "Look at you! You're getting closer every day. Soon you'll be outrunning me." Rukewe laughed, catching her breath. "Maybe I should be the one coaching you," she teased, a playful light returning to her eyes. Their laughter filled the room, a sound that carried their shared victories and the deepening bond between them. There was warmth in their interactions, a sense of connection that hinted at something deeper, a friendship forged through struggle, support, and shared perseverance. Meanwhile, Rukewe's relationship with Jumoke, her former friend, faded into the background. Once she had hoped for Jumoke's encouragement, but her friend had distanced herself. focused on her own Olympic ambitions. The few messages they exchanged were polite but brief, filled with updates on training rather than genuine concern. Though it hurt, Rukewe found an unexpected source of strength in herself. With Obong's support, she learned to trust her own resilience. Her belief in herself no longer dependent on anyone else. One day, after a particularly intense session, Ubong shared a story as they cooled down together. You know, Rukewe, you remind me of one of the most resilient athletes I've ever known. She was a cyclist, and after a terrible accident, she was told she'd never ride again. But she didn't just ride, she went on to win races, inspiring everyone around her. Rukewe's eyes sparkled with hope, inspired by his story and the unwavering faith he had in her. I want to be that person, she said, her voice filled with quiet determination, someone who defies the odds. Obong looked at her with clear admiration, his gaze steady. You already are that person, Ruki. You are stronger than you realize, and one day you will inspire others just as much as you are inspiring me. They held each other's gaze, the unspoken connection between them deepening. Their journey together had built a bridge of trust, understanding, and a quiet mutual respect. As the day ended, Rukewe sat in a moment of reflection, considering how far she had come and the challenges that still lay ahead. Her dream of competing in the Olympics felt uncertain, yet her journey towards recovery had given her invaluable lessons in resilience, self-belief, and the boundless strength of the human spirit. Her resolve had only grown, nurtured by Ubong's encouragement and the connection they had formed along the way. Looking out the window, she felt a soft smile spread across her face. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she was ready to face it, each step fueled by hope and determination. With Ubong by her side, she knew she could take on whatever came next, prepared to keep pushing. Chapter 5. The training facility buzzed with energy as athletes worked hard, each one immersed in their own rigorous routine. Rukewe was among them, standing tall and moving steadily on her own. Though her movements carried a hint of struggle, her face reflected intense focus as she stretched, warmed up, and prepared for the most challenging phase of her recovery. The wheelchair was long behind her now. She was back on her feet and determined to go further. Beside her stood Ubong, her dedicated physiotherapist. He had been her constant guide, providing encouragement and advice as she tackled advanced conditioning exercises. It was clear she had grown stronger, each movement now more confident, more precise than before. Over the following weeks, Rukewe's training intensified. She pushed herself harder and harder, each drill showcasing her unwavering resolve. She ran laps, tackled strength drills, and practiced balanced exercises, her form becoming sharper, her pace faster. Every stride and jump were filled with intensity, an unspoken testament to the dedication that had driven her through recovery. Her doctors had warned her not to rush, yet here she was, determined to defy every limit. Ubong watched her with pride. You are moving like a pro, Ruki. This is beyond what any of us thought possible, he said, beaming. Pausing to catch her breath, Rukewe looked at him with a smile. You helped me believe, Ubong. Now I just need to keep pushing. Their bond had grown deep, built on months of trust, encouragement, and shared effort. Ubong knew she was giving everything she had, and he remained by her side, supporting her as she pushed through each new challenge. With each session, Rukewe reached milestones that once felt unreachable. She sprinted down the track, her body responding with newfound strength, her face set with fierce determination. She was no longer trying to recover. She was pushing herself to surpass the athlete she had been before her accident. Each milestone brought her closer to her ultimate goal, and she moved with a speed and power that felt almost unstoppable. In one particularly triumphant moment, Rukewe completed a sprint drill faster than she had ever done before. Reaching the finish line, she collapsed onto the track, her chest heaving as she gasped for breath. A huge smile spread across her face. "I'm back," she whispered to herself, her voice filled with joy and relief. Nearby, Jumoke, who had been focused on her own training until she got distracted by Rukewe's progress, looked in belief at the stopwatch in her hand. She watched in amazement as Rukewe completed the drill, moving with a force and speed Jumoke hadn't expected. Though she quickly brushed it off, a flicker of doubt crossed her eyes, a moment of uncertainty that lingered even as she tried to ignore it. After the intense session, Rukewe cooled down, taking her time to stretch and hydrate. As she finished, Ubon approached her, admiration clear on his face. "You've done it, Ruki," he said with a proud smile. "You've surpassed everyone's expectation, even mine. No one could have come this far without incredible strength." Rukewe returned his smile, her confidence renewed. "I'm not done yet, Obong. I may be back, but I still have more to prove to myself and to everyone who ever doubted." Chapter 6. The Grand Olympic Stadium was alive with energy. Flags from around the world waved across the stands, and a hum of anticipation filled the air. Spectators held their breath, waiting for the start of the women's track event. For Rukewe, standing on the starting line among the best athletes in the world, this was the culmination of months of sacrifice, pain, and sheer determination. Rukewe's gaze swept the crowd, then locked onto the track before her, a steady resolve in her eyes. She thought of all the mornings in the rehab center, the long nights pushing herself to run again, and the countless hours under Obong's guidance. Her heart swelled with gratitude and pride, yet she remained focused. This was her moment, a chance to prove not just her physical strength, but the resilience she had built through every hardship. Nearby, Jumoke was warming up, casting an indifferent glance in Rukewe's direction. They hadn't exchanged much more than polite words since Rukewe's accident, and Jumoke hadn't masked her skepticism of Rukewe's recovery. After all, she had dedicated years to achieving this level, training relentlessly without the setbacks her former friend had endured. The Olympics were Jumoke's territory, her stage, and she was here to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. But today, as they lined up side by side, a subtle shift in Jumoke's confidence began to show. She glanced at Rukewe, noticing the steady focus in her expression, the unbreakable determination that seemed to surround her. There was a quiet strength in Rukewe that hadn't been there before, a focus that told Jumoke her old friend had changed and she was no longer someone to underestimate. As the starting gun fired, Rukewe sprang forward, her legs surging with power. The track blurred beneath her as she leaned into the stride, feeling the wind on her face and the adrenaline pumping through her veins. She kept her focus sharp, blocking out everything around her but the steady rhythm of her feet against the ground. Her training with Obong had instilled this single-minded focus in her, and now, with every stride, She felt the months of hard work crystallize into something almost unstoppable. Jumoke pushed forward too, determined to maintain her lead. The race was fierce, each athlete giving their all, and for the first stretch it looked as though Jumoke was ahead. But Rukewe's strength, honed through pain and perseverance, began to show. She dug deep, tapping into reserves she hadn't known she had, her pace steady, her breathing controlled. The weeks spent pushing through setbacks and defying expectations had prepared her for this, and with each passing second, she felt her confidence grow. As they rounded the halfway point, Jumoke began to feel a flicker of doubt creeping. She glanced sideways, catching a glimpse of Rukewe, who was now shoulder to shoulder with her. There was no trace of the injured athlete Jumoke had once known. Instead, Rukewe moved with a purpose, her face a picture of fierce concentration. For the first time, Jumoke felt her own confidence waver. Could she really hold her ground against this new unstoppable version of Rukewe? The crowd roared as the competitors entered the final stretch. It was now or never. Rukewe felt her muscles burn, but she pressed on. Memories of her journey flooding her mind. She remembered Obong's encouragement during those grueling rehab sessions, the stories he shared of other athletes who had overcome unimaginable odds, and his unwavering belief in her potential. She remembered the promise she had made to herself to come back stronger, to defy every doubt, especially her own. Fueled by a fierce resolve, Rukewe surged forward, pulling ahead of Jumoke and the other competitors. She pushed harder, every ounce of strength focused on the finish line. The stadium erupted in cheers as Rukewe broke free, her form graceful, every stride carrying her closer to the goal. As the finish line approached, Rukewe could feel the exhaustion threaten to overtake her. But in that split second, she thought of Obong and everything they had shared. The shared struggles, the encouragement, and the quiet bond that had grown between them. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, each step a testament to the strength she had discovered within her. With one final burst of energy, Rukewe leaned forward, crossing the finish line, her chest breaking the tape in first place. The realization hit her as the crowd's roar washed over her. She had done it. She had won gold. Rukewe's legs gave out as she stumbled to a stop, gasping for breath, the enormity of her victory crashing over her in waves. She sank to her knees, covering her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. She had conquered the ultimate test, not just the race, but the journey of recovery and the belief in herself. Jumoke crossed the line moments later, but her finish was not what she had hoped. Coming in fourth, just short of the podium, she stared at the ground, a mix of disappointment and shock clouding her expression. She glanced over at Rukewe, who was still on her knees, overwhelmed with emotion, and for a fleeting moment she felt a pang of respect and perhaps even regret. She knew that if she had been part of Rukewe's recovery, her victory would have been theirs. She also knew that the bond and encouragement they shared in the past had been the strongest boost to her previous performances. She was sure she would have secured either the gold medal or the silver if they were still together. Truly, one doesn't know the value of some relationships until they lose them. Rukewe had not only proven her resilience, but had outpaced her in every sense of the word. As Rukewe stood, wiping her tears, she caught sight of Obong in the stands. He was clapping, his face glowing with pride. Their eyes met, and in that brief exchange, no words were needed. She knew he understood every step, every struggle, and the strength it had taken to get here. Rukewe placed her hand over her heart, a silent thank you for the man who had been there every step of the way. Later, as she stood on the podium, the weight of the gold medal around her neck, Rukewe looked out at the crowd, a radiant smile on her face. This victory was more than a win. It was proof of her journey, a testament to the resilience she had built through pain, perseverance, and belief in herself. It was also a tribute to those who had helped her along the way, especially Obong, whose support had been her lifeline. As the national anthem played, Rukewe closed her eyes, her heart filled with gratitude. She had reclaimed her dream, overcome every obstacle, and found a strength within herself that was unbreakable. This victory was not just hers. It belonged to everyone who had believed in her, who had helped her find her way back. And as she held her head high, Rukewe knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 7. Rukewe stood on the podium, the Nigerian flag draped proudly over her shoulders, amazed that her dream had actually come true. The stadium was alive with applause, and she could feel the energy radiating from the crowd, filling her with an overwhelming sense of gratitude and fulfillment. She felt tears streaming down her face. Each tear symbolized the countless hours of sacrifice, the endless struggle to overcome doubt, and the unbreakable will that had carried her here. She glanced down at her medal, letting her fingers brush against its cool surface, feeling the reality of her achievement sink in. This moment wasn't just about the victory, it was a celebration of the journey, a journey that had tested every part of her strength and courage. As the ceremony ended and she stepped off the podium, Rukewe saw Obong waiting for her. His eyes were bright with pride as he opened his arms, and she went to him feeling the warmth and strength of his embrace. He hugged her tightly, his voice low but filled with emotion. "I knew you would do it," he said softly. "You've inspired everyone here, Ruki, but me especially." They stood there in silence for a moment, the depth of their connection unspoken but clear. Rukewe looked up at him, knowing that she would not have reached this moment without his unwavering belief in her. His support had been her anchor, his words her guiding light through the darkest times of her recovery. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Rukewe noticed Jumoke standing a few feet away, watching them with an expression of uncertainty. There was a hesitation in her stance, an unease that Rukewe hadn't seen before. She looked at Jumoke, remembering their shared dreams, the friendship that had once been their foundation, and the challenge that had pulled them apart. After a pause, Rukewe stepped forward, closing the gap between them. The two stood there for a moment, their eyes meeting in a silent understanding. It was a look that acknowledged the pain of their competition, but also the respect that had never truly faded. "You earned this, Rukewe," Jumoke said softly, her voice carrying a hint of regret. "I should have believed in you, like we used to believe in each other." Rukewe nodded, her expression softening. In that moment, the rivalry dissolved, replaced by the memory of the friendship they once shared. She extended a hand, and after a brief hesitation, Jumoke took it. There was forgiveness there, an unspoken promise to honor the dreams they had once built together. As they released hands, Rukewe felt a sense of closure, a peace that hadn't been there before. She watched Jumoke walk away, knowing that their journey, though complicated, had brought them both to a place of mutual respect and understanding. Rukewe returned to the track, her heart lighter, her spirit renewed. She looked around the stadium, the place of her greatest achievement, and felt a profound sense of completion. She had come full circle, from the childhood dreams that had sparked her passion, through the near-fatal accident that had nearly stolen her future, and finally to this triumphant comeback. Her journey had not only led her to victory, but had also strengthened her bond with Obong and helped her rediscover her friendship with Jumoke. She had faced some of the hardest challenges, had found resilience she didn't know she possessed, and had ultimately come out stronger than ever. As she stood there, her gold medal glistening in the fading light, Rukewe smiled. Her journey had taught her and shown the world that hope, determination, and heart could conquer even the greatest of obstacles. And with that strength, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The end.